They laughed when an old woman spilled coffee on a billionaire's table. But when the waitress stepped in to defend her, the billionaire quietly stood up. What happened next left the entire restaurant speechless. The restaurant was packed that afternoon. Businessmen filled the tables, waiters rushed between customers, and near the window sat an elderly woman named Eleanor, wearing a simple gray coat and carrying a worn handbag. She looked nervous. A wealthy businessman at the next table glanced at her clothes and whispered, "She doesn't look like she belongs here." Eleanor heard him. She lowered her eyes and said nothing. A few minutes later, a young waitress named Sophie brought Eleanor a cup of coffee. "Here you go, ma'am." "Thank you, sweetheart." Eleanor smiled. Then something unexpected happened. Her hand trembled. The coffee cup slipped. It fell onto the floor. Nothing was damaged, but a few drops splashed onto the expensive shoes of the businessman sitting nearby. He immediately stood up. "Are you serious?" Eleanor looked terrified. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry? Do you know how much these shoes cost?" "I didn't mean to." The businessman pointed toward the manager. "Get her out of here." Eleanor's face turned pale. "I'll pay for the cleaning." "You?" He laughed. "With what?" The restaurant became quiet. Sophie walked over. "Sir, it was an accident." He looked at her angrily. "Stay out of this." Sophie swallowed. She needed this job. Her younger brother's college fees were due next week. But she looked at Eleanor. The old woman's hands were shaking. So Sophie quietly said, "She already apologized." The businessman stepped closer. "And you're defending her?" Sophie nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Because she made a mistake. That doesn't make her worthless." Nobody spoke. Eleanor looked at Sophie with tears in her eyes. "Please don't lose your job because of me." Sophie smiled. "I'm not." Then she looked at the businessman. "Money can replace shoes, but it can't replace someone's dignity." The businessman stared at her, then walked away angrily. Eleanor quietly whispered, "Thank you." Sophie placed another cup of coffee on the table. "This one's free." Eleanor smiled. "Why are you so kind to me?" Sophie shrugged. "My grandmother taught me never to judge someone by their clothes." Eleanor looked down. "Your grandmother sounds like a wonderful woman." She was. Sophie smiled sadly. "She passed away last year." Eleanor reached across the table and gently touched Sophie's hand. "I'm sorry." Then something strange happened. Eleanor suddenly looked toward the restaurant entrance. Her expression changed. She whispered, "Oh no." Sophie turned around. A tall man in an expensive black suit had just entered. Two assistants followed him. The restaurant manager immediately rushed toward him. "Mr. Whitmore!" The businessman who had mocked Eleanor suddenly became nervous. Sophie looked confused. The man walked slowly through the restaurant. He stopped beside Eleanor, and without saying a word, he bent down and hugged her. Sophie froze. The entire restaurant became silent. The man whispered, "Mom?" Sophie stared in disbelief. "Mom?" The man was Daniel Whitmore, one of the wealthiest hotel owners in the country, and Eleanor was his mother. Daniel looked around the restaurant. "Who upset my mother?" Nobody answered. His eyes stopped on the businessman. Then he looked at Sophie. "What happened?" Sophie explained everything. Daniel listened quietly. Then he looked at his mother. "Is this true?" Eleanor nodded. "But Sophie protected me." Daniel looked at the waitress. "Why?" Sophie answered honestly. "Because she deserved respect." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly what my mother taught me." Then Eleanor interrupted. "Daniel?" Everyone looked at her. She smiled. "Don't punish anyone." The businessman looked surprised. Eleanor continued, "Embarrassment shouldn't be answered with more embarrassment." Daniel nodded. Then he turned to Sophie. "I've been searching for someone like you." Sophie looked confused. "Someone like me? My company is opening a foundation to help restaurant workers pay for education and family expenses. We need someone who understands kindness, not just business." He handed Sophie an envelope. She opened it. Inside was a letter offering her a leadership position in the foundation, and a $50,000 education grant. Sophie began crying. My brother, Daniel smiled. Yes, your brother's tuition will be covered. Sophie couldn't speak. Eleanor stood and hugged her. Your grandmother would be proud. The restaurant became silent again. But this time, nobody was laughing. The businessman who had humiliated Eleanor slowly walked toward her. I'm sorry, Eleanor smiled. Then remember this moment. He nodded. Daniel looked around the restaurant. Today, everyone learned something. Respect isn't something you give only to people with money. It's something you give because someone is human. Sophie looked at Eleanor, and Eleanor whispered, sometimes, kindness finds you when you least expect it. That afternoon, Sophie thought she was simply defending an old woman. She never knew that the woman was the mother of a billionaire. And she certainly never imagined that one small act of courage would change her family's future. But perhaps the greatest reward wasn't the money. It was knowing that when everyone else chose to look away, she chose to stand beside someone who needed her. And that choice changed everything. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, share, and leave a heart in the comments. Would you have defended Eleanor if you were Sophie?